Oh, baby, do we got a lot of shine today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the DFS Army Fantasy Football Show. I'm, of course, your host, Flex Shane. I got my guy, Brandon Adam, and today we have a very special guest. He is, and I'm not just blowing smoke here, Jax, probably my favorite voice, my favorite newish voice that I've recently discovered.
Thank you.
Of the fantasy football space, of the dynasty space, and really just the whole general game theory. We got Jax Falcone, a.k.a. Scott Bullinger of the Undroppables. Jax, what's going on, brother? Thanks for joining today.
Thank you so much. Yeah, man. Thanks for the intro. Yeah, I love it. Excuse me. Yeah, speaking of voice, my voice cracks on the first words I say. No, it's great to be here. I love it. I appreciate it. I'm in a league with Brandon now. Maybe 2 leagues. Are we in a couple leagues now?
Or
is it just
2 leagues? Yeah,
2.
I took over an orphan that was Alan Sazowski.
Yeah, that league's actually really good. Yeah, you're in two pretty cool leagues with me. So now
Nice.
it's on.
Yeah, it's on like Donkey Kong, that's for sure. I've been watching you closely. I've been listening to every show you've done in the last 4 months.
Thanks, man.
Just to see who you are and what you're really high on and what it matters to you. And what every time I was listening to your pod, I just kept shaking my head up and down like, this is what we need to be talking about more. So I decided to nut up a little bit and ask you to come on to our show and give us some of that knowledge, and let's pump your website and pump your pod, The Undrafted, because if you aren't listening to The Undrafted, you're missing out. I'm telling you, if you're a dynasty player, if you're a high-end dynasty player, you want to listen to this stuff.
That's pretty cool. In some ways, the idea of the show is like I think of it as the Dynasty Players Dynasty podcast. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like not a pretender show, not a super in the weeds show. Just what we all really are thinking and talking about.
Yes.
And because I have a new guest on almost every single week, it keeps me sort of. There's a lot of stuff I always want to talk about because if I have Matt Harmon on, well, I'm going to talk about wide receivers. Well. Now that's another week where I didn't get to talk about this or that. So there's always that yearning of me wanting to bring out some new information, but then being able to pick the brains of some of the best in the business is a blessing. And I'm very grateful. And, the success we've had has lent me and us to have better guests. And man, I take that as a responsibility to get the most out of that guest when they're there. And that's the challenge. I mean, honestly, that's the hardest thing is sometimes meeting someone new, but even just having someone new on the show every single week. But I appreciate it, man. It's a fun show, and I'm glad you enjoy it.
Oh yes.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So Jax, we kind of want to have a bit of an icebreaker, and really when it comes to fantasy football, I mean, like we all play the game to win. Ultimately, that's one of the goals. But I would say a close second is just like the league tilting type situations. Like if I can put Brandon on tilt, I can sleep better that night. So
for sure.
Jax, do you have a situation or something that happened to you or one of your leagues that you were just on absolute tilt and it just to this day you still can't forget it?
Oh, absolutely. It's funny. You this was a secret question, and then you mentioned it on the show or just before the show, and I was like, I know exactly what it is. So for me, it was one of my leagues of record. So sort of the oldest, maybe the second oldest dynasty league I have. So it's really kind of the league of record. It's $100 league, but it's all people I know. And so one of my best friends is in it. And, you draft on your phone, but I was at his house. It was just me and him, and it's rookie draft. And, everybody else is wherever the hell they are. And we're sitting right next to each other. And I have, of course, like always, I have the whole first round. I've got picks galore. And it was the 2020 draft, Jonathan Taylor and, Cam Akers, J.K. Dobbins, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, the whole thing. And I'm a big CeeDee Lamb guy, no doubt about it. And I think but it was running back heavy, as I remember that year. It's kind of like Swift, JT, CEH, unfortunately,
CEH,
Akers, Dobbins. Those guys all went generally before the wide receivers in most drafts. Certainly this one too. In 2020, we valued running backs that way. I think it would be flipped, by the way. That's a whole topic for another story. But it's like the 107. There's super flex, so there's quarterbacks. What was it, that Burrow year? I'm forgetting anything. But either way, it's like the 107, 108. And I have like the 109, 108, whatever. I'm right after my friend. He's sitting. Oh, no, it's someone else is on the clock. And I'm like, okay. And I see him kind of fucking with his phone. this other dude's on the clock, and the trade hits, and I know it's not collusion. I just know it's not collusion, and it is Gardner Minshew for that pick. CeeDee Lamb gets sniped in front of me, and my best friend sitting next to me just fucking grins and just stole CeeDee Lamb in that fucking league. And I erupted, and he knows he was just holding over me, and he'll never let that one down. So yeah, I went on super uber tilt right in front of him as CeeDee Lamb got traded for Gardner Minshew straight up.
Oh my God, that would be insane.
Yeah. So there it is.
One of my favorite things that I like to do is like my oldest home league. It's not a dynasty league. It's just like a redraft league, but it's an auction. And so it's all my old like high school buddies. So we've been doing this league for a long time now, and we always do it in person. Yeah. And like that's the best. It's like you get the auction leagues. That's kind of an auction league, dynasty or redraft?
In person rookie.
Oh, sick.
Yeah.
Ooh, yes.
They're fun.
Well, usually rookie drafts are slow drafts. So when you do like an in-person rookie draft like that, is it slow typically, or is it more?
No, it's kind of like the NFL draft style. So we do a 15-minute first round, 10-minute, and then 5-minute. So yeah, it's like pretty wild. And so trades are, dude. This one, because this is also an interesting league because it's local. It's only dudes that we know around here, because everybody has to show up for the rookie draft. So it's a very, very soft league. Of course, I dominate it, and that's not even bragging. It's just a fact. But there is some wild shit that goes on in this league. It is unbelievable. Just 26 first-round picks for like the 211, I think, last night. It was like, what the hell is going on? Yeah, it was pretty crazy. The 211 was on the clock. The guy goes, anybody want it or whatever, a 208, whatever it was. Late second, I'm like, I sent him some stuff. And then he goes, and they're talking. He's like, no, I think you're the best over here. This guy, but this guy's close. He had 2 first-round picks being offered. He got the final trade was like the 209 for a 26 first and a 25 third. He got like, wow. I was like, what is going on? So of course he snaps it. He's like, good offer, buddy. I'm like, gee, this is fucking wild. So yeah, wild shit happens in those, and I absolutely love it. It's so much fun.
Do you remember what the pick was ultimately?
I can look. Yeah, I don't. I think it ended up being Marshawn Lloyd.
God. I mean, it's a decent bet, but still, I mean.
There's
definitely a hive. There's definitely a hive for Marshawn Lloyd.
I don't even understand. I was like, I don't even know what to say because I would never do anything like that ever in my life. But,
love it.
No matter who the player is, it's really, we'll get into all this, but it's player take aside, right? Ultimately, I just made a trade where I traded Ben Sinnott for, what's going to be the 2.01 next year.
Perfect.
And a 4.02 this year, or whatever it was. I drafted Ben Sinnott, so I got the 4.02. And what's almost, I mean, if it's not the 2.01, it'll be 2.2 or 2.3 at the very least. Sure. So I was like, all right, fine. It seems fair. And I'm on the 4.02, and I don't even want this pick. I'm like, so interestingly enough, in a lot of situations, so there's a lot of players that we might like there or not. But I think a lot of times, and we're going to get into this right now with, I think your first question, if I got the show sheet right, is like, here's going to be good, but I do know potentially who's going to hold value into maybe, the early part of the season, and in that case, you're trying to pick a player that's going to give you, hold the most value, right? So that you can hopefully trade it or it's worth something. How many times are you guys in a dynasty league? You have a player, doesn't even matter who it is. And it's not what is he worth. It's can you even sell him for anything whatsoever at all? Nobody wants to. You could say, hey, this guy's available, and nobody will make you a single offer of any sort. You'd have to, if you offered everybody that player for any of their thirds, they just all flat decline and move on. It's like nobody wants the player whatsoever. It's not even that what's he worth. It's that you can't sell him. So a lot of times you have to think about that type of stuff. I mean, otherwise it's just a roster clogger instantly when you pick them,
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's the psychology behind like the name of that draft pick versus just the value of that overall draft pick.
What real return is, like ROI.
Right. Yes.
Well, let's get into some of the questions here, Brandon. I'm just going to do a little drop and I'll throw it to you.
He's my best friend. He's my pal. He's my homeboy, my rotten soldier. He's my sweet cheese, my good time boy.
I like that.
Nice. Well, we all this is startup season, right? This is the dead part of the season, right before redraft. This is when people start getting into best balls, and then all the startups start. So we're going to focus on the startups. We just had one, and I want to know, what are your key principles that you go in thinking about, what you want your startup to be, and are you willing to pivot if it's not starting to go according to plan? How quick are you to moving and kind of switching up your process and strategy if things aren't going your way? Like when I stole a Rich from you in our draft.
You did.
6th overall.
No, absolutely. You did. Yeah, that's a fact. We wanted Anthony Richardson. You drafted him. You stole him. And it is funny. Yeah, we did have to pivot. We were thinking that Anthony Richardson was absolutely going to be there for us. And Anthony Richardson's a great pick because he satisfies a couple of things. Like, so there's two things in fantasy football or in Dynasty Fantasy Football that I think I separate in my mind. One is value, one is production. And, you can draft Matt Stafford. He's going to give you production. But what's the value? I mean, he's hard to trade. He's getting older. Nobody really wants him. He's not valuable, is he? Mm-hmm. Right? He's not valuable. Mm-hmm. A guy like even Devontae Adams. Talk about production. That dude's probably going to produce. What's he going in best ball? Like 1-2 turn? You know what I mean?
He's like Adams. He's right around mid round 2.
Right. I mean, and you would not be crazy to take him at like pick 12. Like, no, that's not even, not that you should, but it's not like, oh, that'll never work. And then in Dynasty, he goes in like the 6th, 7th round. Like, nobody wants him. He's old and all that. So no value, but a lot of production. Mm-hmm. And then there's certain rookies that you can draft, like, shoot, I don't know, Marshawn Lloyd, I mean, there's one where it's like, he might play, but he might not play, but he has good value right now, Michael Penix, pretty good value, might not play. I mean, now they're talking about he might play. What? God bless him. I think Michael Penix is an interesting story, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about value versus production. And so in a startup, so Anthony Richardson poses both, right? That's why he's such a great prospect for me in a startup, because it's like, I know I'm getting both. I lock it in. So that's a great pick by you. So in a startup, I'm always thinking this is your one opportunity to build as much value in your team as possible, right? So for me, I'm just all about value, and that includes trades. You can think about how many transactions you can make during a startup. A lot. You can move back one spot. So I mean, if you can really grind out a startup, if it's possible where you take a week off, who can afford that these days in this economy? But but if you can literally just sit there and really just grind a startup, you could be trading back every 2 or 3 picks. Hey, buddy, you want to slide up here? Nothing but a third in the future. Don't even worry about it. No big deal, right? You're just boom, 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 boom. Now all of a sudden your team has this immense value. So if I were playing optimally, that would be the goal, would be just to stack as much value as I possibly could into my team post startup. And I don't really care about the player. I mean, if you want Troy Franklin or Jermaine Burton, I don't care. I'll take whichever, you know what I mean? Or whatever the case, Yeah.
Well, it's funny because when we did our startup was a $500 buy-in. And so this was a legit put it on the table type of atmosphere, and very sharp. And to be honest with you definitely grind. You just did what you just spoke about. You did 100% throughout that whole draft, where you weren't afraid to piss people off about taking too much time. You don't give two shits about it. I am so self-conscious about the clock that I'm like, I hate doing that. Like, I hate waiting that long. I can't do it. I have too much energy inside me to click the button. And that's ADD, pretty much, Brandon. Yes, that's ADD. So, but with our direction we went, because it was such a high dollar, high stakes league, we want to win now. And I didn't want we didn't want to wait around and try and Nostradamus 3 years from now.
Right.
Like, that is not what I'm about. And I'm about trying to But that's why we took all those older guys that people didn't want at value, and we just scooped them every single time. And I'm excited about it. But what a experience being in that room, because watching legit pros operate was education, and it was pretty fun to watch, because it just tells me just slow the hell down. Like, you don't need to do that. Like, you just
and I take
the right
that
offer might come.
I take advantage of that, right? So, like, one of the tenets that I have in a startup is that, okay, everybody has a job, right? Or most people have a job, I guess, and so, or they have kids, or they are, sleeping, or they're eating, or they went out to dinner, or they are taking a shit, or whatever well, then they're on the phone. But no,
exactly.
But they're doing something, right? They're busy. And so maybe their pick is like, you're at the 301 and they don't pick till the 4-5, so they're not even paying attention. And so then they see the 301, they go do stuff, and it's an hour or two later. They just had dinner. Oh, honey, yeah, just give me a second. I just want to, still the 301. And they got like 15 minutes, and it's like 3 hours left in the clock of an 8-hour clock. They're like, I would make this pick. Why the fuck isn't the pick? Now all of a sudden they're interested in your pick. Whereas for 5 hours, I'm not saying that you should do this every time, but the reality is that person is now interested in your pick, and they weren't 5 hours ago.
Right.
That's just that happens all the time. That happens to me. I'm sitting there, go, fuck, Garrett Wilson's right there. Maybe I just hop in and make this trade here, or whatever. Like, I wasn't, when it first came on the clock, I was like, I need to move up. But after sitting here for a while, fuck, that guy's good, man. Let me see if I can make a move. All of a sudden, you can find trades that way, because not everybody's paying attention to every single pick. But if you take your time, and especially if you do want to move the pick, I've heard a lot of people say, I tried to trade, nobody wanted to. It's like, okay, that doesn't, no, you didn't. You know what I mean? Because, sometimes it's painstaking, and I hate doing this, but sending an offer, and you guys did it. I saw, sending an offer to each owner.
Yep.
That sucks, because you already know you're sending 11 offers. It takes however many minutes to do that, and then someone didn't see it. 5 guys didn't see it. They don't give a shit. 2 guys laughed at you. 1 guy said, "Nah, bro, you're getting the comments. You have to just wade through it." And 1 guy goes, "Well, maybe," and you're like, "There it is. That's all I need."
And that's it.
I only need 1, or 2.
Yeah, you definitely created an atmosphere of pressure. I could feel it whenever you were on the clock. You were creating pressure for the league. So that was something that I'm gonna start doing more of. But it was very interesting to see how you went about it. I'm very much, people do the productive struggle. I am never that guy. I don't do that kind of stuff. I try to win as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So like, that's just the way I do startups. And but with some of these big time players, I've been noticing they like to do that productive struggle stuff. But I think
productive struggle is interesting, because the league I mentioned earlier, where I'm this home league where I dominated it, and because it's this home league, nobody really knows what they're doing, and it's easy to take everybody's money, which is what a lot of our listeners, by the way, a lot of times I'll have people on, they're like, well, the edges are a lot harder nowadays. And it's like, yeah, true. If you're playing with a bunch of fucking sharks,
get out of those leagues,
right? Which we do, because it's a challenge. But if you're playing with just jabronis that you fucking know, and you have any of this knowledge, you're going to kill them. And so, when I hear productive struggle, I love productive struggle, but focusing on productive. I don't know about the struggle part. The struggle part for me, if you were to say, Scott, define the struggle part, for me, it would be making it harder on myself to win this year, even though I'm trying to win this year, making it harder because I'm going to be so dope in the future years, but I'm productive, meaning I'm not punting year 1. There's a lot of people who look at productive struggle and they think that's just punt year 1, year 2. Why would you ever do that? I don't even understand why you would do that. Like, I just said that the number 1 goal is to build as much value in the team as possible. Well, if I have the most valuable team, it's got to have a puncher's chance of winning in year 1. I just said I want the most valuable team. So clearly that's something that, you want to do at the same time. And the struggle part is, well, I traded back out of the 2.01 to the 4.02, but I picked up a future first and a couple mid-round picks. And okay, well, I'm not going to have that, whoever that is. Instead, I'm going to have the guy at the 4-2. Well, that's a struggle, I guess. But I'm not punting. I'm right here, baby. And next year, I've got 3 first-round picks or whatever the case might be, right?
That's awesome.
Well, I think that's really interesting approach because it kind of, I think, goes right into my next question, and that really is, I find like there's a certain group of players that are particularly challenging to really value, and these are the types of guys that are, you have them on your team and you want more for a trade than anybody in your league is willing to offer you. So ultimately, these guys just end up being sales, right, or holds ultimately in your team. And typically, this is more like the older player. You mentioned like the Devontae Adams, but guys like Mike Evans, Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, even CMC to a certain degree, right? If you really want to get these guys off your team because you don't think you're in a position to win, sometimes you have to sacrifice a little bit of value. We jokingly call it liquidity paradox, right? Like these guys in theory are liquid, but you're not willing to accept a lower value for them. So are you typically, Jax, like if you're in rebuild mode, are you willing to sell one of these old productive vets at the expense of getting a young, like a Drake London sort of thing, right? A guy where we haven't quite seen it, but the potential is just absolutely massive. Like, are you willing to make that gamble?
Yes, for sure. I mean, you got to be, the delusion is a hell of a drug, right? Yeah. And I watch a lot of people delusional about their team. And it's actually it's actually sad in some ways. Like they have no idea what they're doing in a dynasty league. They're like, I was in a live draft local last night, and it's just the delusion that, a guy, I've got like this amazing team, and this guy was at the 1.04 and his team is low to mid. It's not a great team. And he traded future first plus his 104 to go up to 102 to get Marvin Harrison. In a vacuum, I don't know if that's an awful trade. I don't love it, but for his team and for his situation, it's awful. It's like the worst possible decision. But how do you explain that? So there's so many people who just misvalue their team, right? And so they don't understand that they're probably not going to win or whatever. So that's the number one thing is like, okay, I know what kind of team I am. Well, if I know I'm not going to really win, what is Mike Evans doing on my team? Like, right. So yeah, and we have a statement. It comes from the great Mike Liu, the Iron Bank, and the Iron Bank is future capital, future draft capital. I always say your future, the 26th first round pick won't blow out his ACL. It can't. Yeah. It can't score you any points, but it will never hurt. He's fine. So, the 26th first round, the 25 second rounder, it's just going to only increase in value as we get closer. I mean, think about like the 3.02, the 2.11 in a rookie draft. If you tried to sell a third round pick, a 25 third round pick right now, you just said, hey, 25 third, what will you give me for it? People would be like, fucking nothing. What are you talking about? I don't want that.
Exactly.
Nobody would even be like, what are you even talking? Yeah. Like, I don't buy your 25. I don't come again. I don't understand what you're saying. But when your 25 third is on the clock and it's the 3.04 and Kamani Vidal's there or whoever the guy is next year, they're going to be like, I'll give you a 26 second and a 26 third right now. And you're like, oh, well, that's great. I'll do that, but no one will do that for your 25 third now, so understanding when things will be at their peak value so that you can, again, maximize the value of your team at all times. It's just that simple.
What you're saying is timing is everything with trades, guys.
Yes.
Timing is everything in trades. If there is no pressure of any kind on the trade partner you're working with, what is you got to give them, you got to artificially create urgency, and you got to artificially create the reality you want to paint to get that trade done. And that's what this is. That's goddamn it, sales, right, Jax? That's sales. That's pretty much sales, right?
Yeah. And the glass of water at the fucking hot baseball game, I'll pay you $100 for a glass of water if I'm on the third baseline frying my ass off. But if you were just in your house, someone's like, "Give me $1 for a glass of water," you'd be like, "Wrap it out of their hands, get the fuck away from me."
Right? Like, and I think people that are on our channel, the DFS community, like overall probably isn't as patient as the average Dynasty player when they start playing Dynasty. And that's something they have to learn how to do. And I think that this is why we're having Jax on, is to kind of give you a little bit of knowledge if you're going to dive into Dynasty that you can kind of transfer over. I mean, even being a DFS guy, like and being heavily involved in DFS, you have traits that are great for Dynasty.
Right.
You have traits. You know what the market is today and what the reality is today, probably better than anybody else out there. Dynasty guys are pie in the sky. This is what's going to happen. Yes. This is the narrative I'm building up in my brain.
Hopium.
And this hopium, baby. And that's exactly right. And I think that's where it's a great thing to be able to do both, because it kind of balances you out a little bit.
Yeah, no doubt, man. I forgot what I was going to say before I said hopium, but it's exactly right. God, I had something, but I forgot what it was. So ask me the next question. I
right on. We'll go straight to number 3 here. And so what everybody talks about in rookie drafts is talent versus draft capital versus landing spot and situation, right? So how do you weigh in those kind of factors, and how does your model weigh in anything like draft cap like that you guys are starting to use this year? For example, like for a talent versus draft cap, like Ricky Parasol, first round draft pick, but buried underneath Deebo Samuel, IU, Kittle, CMC. Like, what do we do with Ricky Parasol versus a Troy Franklin, where I think he's going to be the day one flanker wide receiver in that offense and is going to end up getting touches right away?
Yeah, it's a great question. By the way, I was totally distracted by the awesome dude in the chat noticing my my Leon poster. So thank you so much. That's my avatar.
Is that what the avatar comes from? What is? I'm not sure what that. I don't know what that show is.
Oh, it's a old movie. Well, old. Fuck, I'm old. But an old movie, Leon the Professional. It is absolutely outstanding. A young Natalie Portman, slightly inappropriately. It's
slightly inappropriately.
Yeah, no, she's like supposedly like whatever 14 or something, and she falls in love with this assassin. Him. But he doesn't do it.
We'll have to watch it. That's your homework, people. Leon.
It's a great movie. It's a great movie, and he's a simple man, but he
fantastic
kills for the right reasons, money and
there principle. You go. Hey, all warriors do.
And love. Okay. And love.
While we're peeling back the onion here, I'm really curious. Where does the pseudonym Jax Falcone come from?
Dude, it's a bunch of nonsense. It's nonsense. It was basically, when I first got on Twitter, I was trying to just be incognito. I wasn't trying to be somebody. So I just was trying to just fly under the radar and like listen. I was trying to learn, learning. It was a cool place. Like when you first get on Twitter, you're like, shit, I can like have a conversation with Evan Silva, maybe if he pays any attention to but you can ask or talk. And so you can interact with whomever you care to in any field that you want. And so I was like, well, this is cool. I don't really need for them to hear me. So I don't need to be me. I'll just be this Jax Falcone guy and just ask questions and learn. And then at one point, I started to become a little popular or whatever. And I tried to change it. And people were like, where the fuck's Jax? I'm like, all right, fine. It's Jax. That's the guy. So it's just really just a bullshit name, but it's pretty badass sounding. So it's okay.
I love it, man. I love it. It's sweet. For whatever reason, I always think about like in the Batman movies, the Falcone character.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. People do mention that. Yeah.
The villain.
Yeah. My dog. So I have a pit bull named Jax. There he is right now.
Oh,
hey, buddy.
Right on cue, right?
Right on cue. Perfect.
Wow.
Good boy. Yeah. So what was the question?
Draft capital versus
draft cap versus landing spot.
Oh yeah.
Where do you weigh that out? And like, are you going Ricky Parasol over a Marshawn Lloyd? Are you going Ricky Parasol over, Troy Franklin?
What's interesting is you guys mentioned we have the UN score model, which is a wide receiver model that put into visual and reality some of the things that we've been thinking over the past several years. But before this year, it didn't exist. So yeah, there's other wide receiver models that people had and other bits of information. And we would take, me and my team, Chalk, and mostly me and Chalk, but everybody else around us at the Undroppables. But like, Chalk and I would always try and formulate what's the right answer, because really all you're trying to be is right. Like I always joke, everybody's rankings are wrong. It's just how. We don't know how they're wrong, right?
You need to tell this to my buddy Matt.
Yeah, we're wrong. I just don't know how yet. How are you wrong? I don't know. You're wrong. I'm wrong. He's wrong. They're wrong. The NFL was wrong for sure. That's for sure. But how is what's important. So we try to figure it out. And so this past year, we did come out with the UN score model. It's really good. But in the past, I didn't have that. So this is the first year. So technically, my process changed this year because I've incorporated a new data point that I didn't previously have. So, but in general, to answer your question, I go mostly with my belief over, narrative-based things, right? So, landing spot is draft capital. I do think of it a little bit like, obviously, like I like Dizzy Abanikanda. Okay. I thought he was pretty explosive. Then he goes in the 5th round and is parked behind Breece Hall. Well, I don't know. What do you want me to do? I'm not that excited about him, right? Yeah. So I think landing spot matters, or where they're at matters a little bit more for running backs, because running backs are handed the ball, whereas wide receivers earn their targets. And generally there's 3 of them on the field. If you're really good and you're on the field, Puka Nacua earned targets. All you had to do was get on the field, and he didn't need to be handed the ball. He was open. So fucking he got the football, you know what I'm saying? So there's a little bit of that. So with wide receivers, I just go with talent, well ahead of situation. The situation can also change. If there's a bad quarterback, he ain't gonna be there. If there's a bad coach, he ain't gonna be there. So the AJ Brown corollary, right? So I mean that situation changed for him because of course it was not gonna be shit forever. He's a great player. He's gonna be fine.
Like a mistake that I made. I pushed Burks up because of opportunity when he was drafted, because they got rid of their wide receiver 1 and was replaced with him 1-for-1. And that kind of boosted value in people's minds instead of looking at the flags,
By the way, I was a Burks fan. I had Burks close to wide receiver 1. This is me. Burks, I was like up there. I really like Burks. If I had the damn UN model, I wouldn't have drafted his ass, because the UN model hated him. And so, it hated. I was skeptical of Quentin Johnston. In 20 leagues, I only drafted him once. So I did a good job fading him. The UN model hated him. The UN model doesn't like Ricky Pearsall. It doesn't like Xavier Legette. It doesn't like Adonai Mitchell. 0 shares, 0 cares, baby.
Wow.
Yeah, that's true. I famously traded. This is like and you're a Patriots fan, so you know this pain. I traded away DJ Moore when N'Keal Harry was a rookie to go and get N'Keal Harry, and like that's one of my worst trades of all time. Oh, look at that! There you go, TB12, baby. That's right. I knew you'd appreciate that. Yeah, man. So like, how did your model view JSN? I don't know if you have it handy. This is not on the show sheet, obviously.
No, I do.
Yeah,
I do.
He's a guy
Go ahead.
Well, because he's a guy that we were like, I'm having a really hard time valuing him in Dynasty. Last year, he was my top ranked wide receiver coming out, even after he was drafted to Seattle to be the 3rd wide receiver on the team. And my general thought is profile's there. All of his teammates loved him, and really he's just he would get inflated throughout the draft process, and then all of a sudden he's stuck third on the depth chart. And so, like, how do you reconcile that type of situation?
So obviously the model is only so good, right? Any model is only so good. But I will say that JSN, so our model, basically, if you're above a 90, you're elite. So the players that have scored above a 90 are Jefferson, Chase, Lamb, and this year Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. This only goes back to 2018, so take that with a grain of salt. So anything older than that, we don't have. There's a lot of data that's just not that we value that is unavailable if we go too far back. Anyway, but Jackson Smith and Jigba scored right at 90. And so he's right on the cusp of being an elite prospect for us. So he was our wide receiver 1 last year. Him and Jordan Addison were right at the top. And then 3rd was Tank Dell. I was not as into Rashee Rice, but he came in 4th, and then Puka was 5th. And those are the only players above a certain threshold of 70, which is a pretty big threshold. And then further down, Quentin Johnson was in the same sort of ballpark as we're finding Keon Coleman, Adonai Mitchell, those type of players. He was our wide receiver 12 in the model. He certainly wasn't my wide receiver 12. I would have taken him wide receiver 4 or something like that. But when you sort of use the model to decipher ADP, it would have historically done really well. This year, what it's helped me do, and whether or not this is a mistake or not, I will find out. I have a saying on the show, ready to be wrong. I'm ready to be wrong. I'm ready.
Yep.
I'm sure I'm wrong somehow. I don't know how. And it's cool that I am, because it's like, why would your pride be attached to something that is impossible to really know? It's not,
oh man,
you know what I'm saying? Like, is Adonai Mitchell going to be good? I don't fucking know. The model says no. A lot of the data says no, but he looks cool, man. I mean, what do you want me to do? I'm
the worst when I'm wrong. It's the worst. Oh, yeah. It's the worst. I get
in Dynasty. In Dynasty, it's super important to get over that quick.
Yeah.
In redraft or whatever, in best ball, even, it's like you can still be like, dude, I was totally right, but because it's over, you can't fix anything. But in Dynasty, being first to react to wrong, there's value there. There's value there.
Big time.
I traded Quentin Johnston as soon as I thought maybe I had made a mistake with my one share. I traded him for Devontae Adams straight up, like week 1 or something like that. Yeah. And it's like, and now you can't even come close. I mean, it was pretty much, that was a bad trade when it happened. I traded him to a Charger fan. God bless you. You know your league. But the point of the matter is that that's just not even close to available as the season went on. But I wasn't like, no, dude, he's going to be good. Like, it's going to be fun. I was like, you know what? I'm starting to get the bad juju. I'm getting out. And I think that's important. That. Yeah, it's important.
That's a huge
So if people want to get access to you and model, is that on your Patreon from the Undroppables?
Yeah, that's but you can buy for $20 the whole thing. Classes 18 through 24. It's $20. Just go on the undroppables.com to our store. You can buy some gear if you want to, cool hat or sweatshirt.
I saw those.
But yeah, I mean, just grab the model. It's worth it. $20. It's and it's pretty slick too. It's really cool, and it goes back. There's the whole thing. Yeah.
I mean, if they would have gave you Tank Dell, Rashee Rice, Puka Nacua last year, my God, could you imagine if you could have had that take? I mean, Jesus, that would have been. Jeez. And now you're telling me. So speaking of UM model, I want you to talk to me about Troy Franklin.
There it is.
Because Troy Franklin is a misunderstood prospect at this point.
Yes.
I think he got gross. There was a gross overreaction to the combine by the NFL and by our fantasy community as well. And I reacted too. Like I had him at wide receiver 4, and he after the draft he dropped all the way down to 8 for me.
Yeah.
But now he's moving himself back up because I'm starting to see your data, and your data is telling me, boy, you better be buying this guy because he ranks really high with yards per route run against yards first downs route run. He is right there, top 5 in prospect pool, and that is something that I really enjoyed on the Undroppables was your visual graphs of these important analytics, and you can see it right in front of you. It's you can't say I haven't. You can't misdiagnose or misread it. It's plain as day, and that is telling me that Troy Franklin is really undervalued right now for what his production was.
No doubt. It's funny. We joke because the UN model, because we were kind of high on him pre-draft. I was in a rookie draft, and I put in the Undroppables, group chat. I showed that I took him at a certain spot, whatever, 2-7, 2-8, whatever it was. And it was over there's other players we like, right? It was whatever. Mm-hmm. And I put in the draft chat, this is a Troy Franklin family, damn it. We're a Troy Franklin family. We just got to go with it and lean into it and take him when he's there. The model has him as the wide receiver 3 in the class, ahead of Rome Odunze slightly. I do not have him ahead of Rome Odunze, just to be very, very clear. But my point is that's where he falls in the model. So that tells us that at ADP, according to the data, he's a buy. And so every time I really want to make a point to draft him because of the model, really, and because of some of my priors, I guess. But some of my priors are based on fucking data. It's not like I'm emotionally invested. I don't even know. I mean, he could suck for all I know. Again, I don't know, but
we just like the numbers.
Yeah, it just says he's good. Some of the players that have failed that were in the model, there's not very many. Certainly none of not very many that are of his score. But like Jerry Jeudy would probably be the one that scored higher than Troy Franklin. That was a miss. I'm trying to think if there was another one further back, but really there's nothing in the model like at his score. There's really almost no failure rate since 2018. He's probably going to be the first one. I mean, I'm certainly ready for that result.
Don't say that. I got so overweight right now. It's crazy.
Me too. But the point is like, okay, I'm ready for that to be a possibility. But even if we go narrative based here, he's drafted with his college quarterback by a coach who is 100% married to that quarterback. Period. Like, if this quarterback doesn't work for Sean Payton, what's plan B? There's no plan B. They'll be like, dude, you did all this. What the fuck? So I think the whole, group is tied to success. Nix, Franklin, and Sean Payton. So yeah, man, I think this is what it's going to be. And this is the quarterback that gave him the production that he got in college. So I'm ready for it, man. There's a lot of pushback.
I mean, we've been seeing, Theo Greminger was an early proponent of Troy Franklin and got scared off of him for some reason.
Big time.
And I stuck to my,
I was just on his show. I said,
amen. You should. I was telling Alan Seslowski, hold his feet to the fire, dude, because he was a Troy Franklin guy. And it just, you got to believe in the analytics a little bit here. Like quit worrying about the combine and the underwear Olympics and all this stuff.
At his price. Like,
yes.
He's not that expensive. I mean, you're talking about a late second most of the time.
Yes.
I'm sure in many leagues you could draft him in the early third. Like, if you're not prioritizing him, and you took someone else, he might fall to you there too. And obviously there, it's like you must smash.
Yeah, I'm there with you. I've been drafting him anywhere from 208 beyond. That's where I have him. You're going to hate hearing this. I kind of liked Donnie Mitchell just because I like traits. I like traits. Okay. Yep. I'm a big trait guy, but I'm ready to be wrong on him.
There it is.
And Shane, my friend over here, was like, threw up the big hard X on him when we were doing our breakdown. And he was higher on Ladd McConkey. He was higher on Xavier Worthy.
I know Pearsall. I love Pearsall. He's one of my guys.
I want to know what you think about Xavier Worthy. This is not on the show sheet. This is just purely for me.
Totally. I mean, Xavier Worthy does very well in the model as well. He's right there. I think so. I'll look at it real quick here. Worthy is wide receiver 6 behind Ladd McConkey. So it does go Neighbors, Harrison, Franklin, Odunze, McConkey, Worthy, and Jermaine Burton is the secret 7. I mean, Jermaine Burton actually scores right there. Right, that's basically a tier for us because everything after that is a little bit in a different. In anything above where Jermaine Burton has traditionally fired pretty well in the NFL, historically in the model. Again, only going back 2018. There's a group of guys basically. I suppose you could grab Roman Wilson, Jalen Polk, Brian Thomas, Luke McCaffrey, Jalen McMillan, kind of in a little group. But yeah, it's interesting because after a certain point, it's actually like, there's hits and misses, quite frankly. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Because it's like, it's just it's just hits and misses. So after those sort of 7, I say, whatever you think, But Adonai Mitchell is the wide receiver 22 in the model. But again, he's clustered. He's clustered with a bunch of guys. Like you could say he's right there with, he's only 2 points different than the wide receiver 12 and Roman Wilson. So there's a big cluster, which is actually kind of makes sense with this class because everybody's like, it's a great class. And it's true. There's a lot of guys that are like 50-50 propositions. Like that's what these guys are. There's probably 26 guys that score as a 50-50, or better. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I mean, I love Malik Washington. Malik Washington scores below Adonai Mitchell. what am I going to do about it? You know, what am I going to do about it? I can cry about it. I mean, you draft them if you like them, you know?
Does your UN score take into account for physical traits of any kind?
There's 0 athleticism, 0 size.
So this is pretty much, so your algo, because other people's algo has all that stuff in it.
It can. Yeah.
They mix it up in there.
We
so
feel
your
like
algo
it's going to hurt the model, not help the model, because it probably would have taken Tank Dell down, and Tank Dell's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So I like how you're doing this, because
Devontae Smith.
Really,
why do we want to hurt Devontae Smith's score? He's also awesome. You know what I mean? So yeah, you know, and I don't know exactly the other thing that we found, and I think it's going to be on the further down the show, but the wide receiver prototype is changing right in front of our eyes.
Let's talk about it. The
one thing that I do that I've done for years is I've done what's called the anatomy of a an elite wide receiver or whatever, anatomy of a running back. And it's not predictive. The model is stating to be predictive. The anatomy is not. It's more reflective. It's sort of showing us what does an elite wide receiver look like today? What are the traits they share? It's just identifying traits. And, but what we've seen is that both at running back and at wide receiver, smaller and lighter. I mean, at both positions in a very, very drastic way. And I think it's due to the fact that the game has changed. You go back. I mean, I'm old enough to remember Michael Irvin and, the jump ball plays that that was how you played. It was run the football or throw it up to a big badass outside X. That was it. So why would I? Yeah, right. Why would I draft Tank Dell in that environment? I would never have drafted Tank Dell in 98 or 2008, right?
Early 2000s, man. Yeah.
Right. But in 2028, it could be all Tank Dells. I don't really know. We're seeing a change. So who knows? So, you gotta be willing to change what your previous assumptions were. And I think that's something that you don't want to take out of the model. So, the anatomy has shown us that is changing. Faster pass, faster pace, faster release, right? Guys are throwing it much quicker, closer to the line of scrimmage, lower ADOT, higher completion percentage, lower turnover worthy plays. Like that's the way the league is being played. It's like the short passing game is almost like the running game now, and the running game is sort of like that's almost like, oh, we snuck one in on you or ran it once. It's like, whoa, what the hell are they doing running? So the whole game has changed in that way. Obviously, with the contact rules, all these things lending to a guy like Tank Dell to be successful.
That's awesome.
One of the things that people are criticizing about Xavier Worthy is the fact that he's not great off the line just because he's going to get beat. But if you don't play that position, say you play as a flanker, then you bake into the fact that most of these off defenses aren't playing man-to-man coverage anymore. So these quick guys can get open, and then you kind of just add on the last element where if these passing quarterbacks are staying in the pocket and they get sacked, the chance that you're actually going to do anything on that specific drive is next to nothing, right? It's almost as painful as a turnover.
Right.
So you get the ball up quick, you get these quick twitchy guys and see what they can do out with the legs. Like you look at Xavier Worthy's college tape. I'm sure you watched some of the tape along with it. How many passes did he get behind the line of scrimmage? And they just said, okay, just go be athletic, be skillful, kind of like the Tank Dells of the world, right? And so, and I mean, ultimately, it's just the game's evolving, but also a lot of these crotchety, old school coaches, they're starting to phase out of the league as well. So their traditional X, I wouldn't go as far to say as the X position is dead, but I would certainly say it's dying.
It's close, dude. Like, I mean, how many busts have been out of the X position, out of the draft?
Oh, yeah.
The last 10 years, 5 years. I mean, it's insane.
That's why, honestly, and so this is kind of controversial because I know, like, Brandon loves Jermaine Burton, but I'm kind of out on Jermaine Burton, right? When you look, yes, a lot of his advanced analytics are good. I know Matt Harmon really liked them with perception, but ultimately, his traditional the position he plays is a dying breed, and then you bake into the knucklehead factor. We've seen so many talented players come to the NFL, and what makes you successful in the NFL? Everybody's athletic. Everybody's good at the game.
Yeah.
It's what's between the ears.
Yep.
And so that's why I'm kind of out on the guy like Jermaine Burton for all those reasons.
I'll take my shots.
I like Burton a lot, but I get that point. Burton could be a little bit more Marvin Mims than he is anything else. And, Mims scored pretty well in the model, but also in Scott Barrett, I think, had him as like wide receiver 2 or something, before the draft.
I still got faith.
Yeah. Me too, but I'm just saying, like, maybe he's a little bit more of that, whereas I think Mims is a little less of a target hog. I mean, they score very close. Mims was a 65, Burton was a 69. Nice. 68. Sorry, ruined the joke. But like they're right in that sort of that point where it's like, hey, these are pretty good bets, but not as solid. So yeah, that's where you start to see. But like, and you're right. So the elite X guys, which is like, I would say the model sort of doesn't like the X prototype, just in general.
I've noticed that.
It didn't like N'Keal Harry, doesn't like all these guys, right? Quentin Johnson doesn't like Adonai Mitchell, Tez Walker, Brendan Rice. Like, none of these guys are right. So the fact that Marvin Harrison scores a 91.9 and is as high as he is just tells you how great he is. Number one. Number two, the fact that Rome Odunze scores as high as he does is also a very encouraging, data point for a guy like that. So, those outside X's, if I'm going to draft them, they're going to have to be really elite in this score, I would say. Otherwise they're a very, very dubious bet.
Interesting. How did the model view Brian Thomas? BTJ.
He's a 60, so he's wide receiver 10.
Not good.
Not bad. I mean, wide receiver 10. The one thing that we do have in the model is a pretty good layout of like what these spots are. So like anybody in the 60s. Let's see, points per game. 23% of those players scored over 10 in years 1 through 3 points per game. 19% over 12, so forth and so on. And it's interesting. So I'll just give you some quick ones. So anybody over a 90, total average fantasy points per game is 15, 80 to 90, 13, 70 to 80, 11, 60 to 70, 6. 60 and below 3. Like, so it literally goes 15, 13, 11, 6, and 3. So the model kind of does nail that. Percent over 16, 50% of players over 90 score that, and so yeah, it really, we post all this so that you can kind of see what it's doing. So again, even in any situation, there's no sure bets, right? But
of course,
yeah, it's pretty strong data. In other words, percent over 12 PPR fantasy points per game for years 1 through 3. Anybody over an 80, all those players 80 to 90 and 90 and above, 77% score over 12. So that's where you kind of look at Troy Franklin and go, what the hell am I doing here? He's in the 70s. That's a 53% over 12. So this is what you're talking about. I mean, you're just literally just playing the odds with it. So it doesn't mean you're right. It just means that, this is what the numbers show.
It just gives you an edge. It gives you the way I'm going to use it, how I'm going to implement it is A, it's going to check my work. B, see if I am deciphering numbers the right way on whoever I'm using, fantasy points, PFF, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'm also going to use it against ADP, like you said.
That's how you
and that is such an edge because you can position yourself. Let's say you're 110. You're sitting there looking at Brian Thomas Jr. You hate Brian Thomas Jr. because of this model. You go, I'm going to move back to 206, 207, right. And I'm going to
pick up a future first and Troy Franklin or something. You're like,
I'm going to pick up an extra second and Troy Franklin and
or
have
Jermaine Burton or whatever. Value. Yes, yeah, you can take who you like. That's right,
and that's how we should go about using this tool.
Yes.
That's awesome, and I'm going to be using it from now on, brother. And that I think it's a weapon that can be quite a good edge for you moving forward. And in a sea of saturation with fantasy on how many people are putting out content, putting out whatever algo. I really like the fact that you guys decided not to add a RAS score, not to add draft cap, and you let the numbers dictate it, and you let the numbers kind of work themselves out.
There is draft capital, though.
Draft cap.
So what's interesting about the way that draft capital works, though, is that draft capital, so you pre-draft, there's a score, and then draft capital can only hurt you.
Oh, interesting.
So you can't go up. It's only basically if you lose, draft capital, you lose score.
So it essentially protects you against somebody overdrafting a bad prospect.
That's right.
And then it pushes. Yeah, I got you.
That's right.
I love
so
that. That's
and the other thing is bad prospects, if they get overdrafted, it's almost worse for them because it's like you're not getting anything, bro. You sucked the whole way. You still suck. And someone made a mistake. We're not going to fucking give you extra points because someone thinks you're good, but we will hurt you, right? So it kind of makes logical sense. Like, Xavier Legette did not score well in the model. We're not moving him up. It's like we understand he's a first-round pick. At some point, he is a value because he's a first-round pick and he's going to get on the field and he might have value to trade. But the likelihood that he hits as an elite wide receiver, still very low.
Are you of the proponent of drafting other players because you think they're tradable, or do you like just sticking with your guys because your guys?
How many times have you been hurt by that game?
Exactly.
I've been hurt by that game. Like, I don't like playing that game. If I'm going to get stuck with someone, I did it with CEH once. I was not a CEH guy. That's pretty much the last time I ever did that. I was like, I was at the 102. Taylor was gone. I liked, and as it turns out, it didn't really matter, but I like Dobbins, Swift, Akers, all better than him. And I took CEH and I was like, I know he's going to have all the steam going into week one. I'm going to be able to trade him and blah, blah, blah. And I never traded him. He rotted on that roster. I don't even know what the hell happened, but I was actively trying to trade and nobody wanted to.
Because I've been hearing people say to do that. And I'm like, that's the dumbest.
I think, Brendan, that's more strategy. That's more a strategy. If say you're playing best ball, and I don't know, Jax, do you play best ball?
Yeah,
you do. Okay, so it's more of a thing where, listen, to some degree, you might not like a player, but that market sentiment, that ADP, as it were, that market value of that player, to some degree, you have to kind of trust the market, and that I think more of but in Dynasty, some of these people maybe have 2 or 3 teams. I think I have 8 or 9 teams. I mean, Brandon, you're a DGen, and I'm sure you are too, Jax. Which we love you that you're our people.
I'm above 30.
And that's maybe where you might want to have one share of these types of players because. And this is, I think this is more of a Podfather say, but can that player beat me? If I don't draft them and I fade the hell out of them, can that player beat me?
Right.
Like a BTJ, a player like that, I feel like could beat me if I fade him completely, right?
Absolutely,
Whereas I feel like a Jermaine Burton probably can't. So,
one of the guys who scored similarly to Brian Thomas Jr. was DK Metcalf, another player that the model missed. So the model misses Terry McLaurin. The model misses. Those are the 2 biggest misses, I'd say, Terry McLaurin and DK Metcalf. And so I've said it a million times. Hey, look, Brian Thomas Jr. somewhere between DJ Chark, Gabe Davis, and DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf can beat you. Gabe Davis and DJ Chark won't. I'm not sure which one. He could be Terrace Marshall, I suppose, on the real low side. But this is who Brian Thomas Jr. is. But he's an electric athlete. So for those reasons, he's probably closer to DK Metcalf than these other guys, but who knows, right?
Just before, because we're about to wrap up soon, before you ask him the last question, can you just spit out just 3 or 4 names of guys that you are high on, not in the first round?
Of rookie drafts.
Of the rookie drafts.
Yeah, I sure can.
just throw a couple out
there. So I like Ben Sinnott a lot. Okay. I think, I've been pretty good at tight ends, over the years because it's not hard, actually. You're looking for big, strong, fast. How hard is that? Right? With a little
Theo
bit of
Johnson.
It's not hard because really, you can find average. Hunter Henry's available right now in whatever league you're in. Yep. So you can get Hunter Henry. So you don't care if you miss on a tight end. True. But you don't want to miss with a premium pick. So you'd rather choose later. So the guys like Theo Johnson, and I like Eric All a lot. Mm-hmm. I think he probably would have tested pretty well. He's also one of those George Kittle types where he played for Iowa, led his team in yardage in 7 games with 300.
Whoa.
Okay. Iowa was basically they played with a rock instead of a football, I think. There's unbelievable. So he could be great, and we would have no idea. He didn't physically test because he popped his ACL. I think it was an ACL. So this guy's just flying under the radar. He's going to be playing in Cincinnati. This is incredible. So so these tight end, I'm just taking shots with these guys, but I like Ben Sinnott a lot. He's good draft capital. He's going to be tied to a young rookie quarterback. Sounds like they really like him. Sounds like he's going to be on the field right off the get. So I like Ben Sinnott. I love Troy Franklin. I like Jermaine Burton. I like Javon Baker. If he wasn't a Patriot, if he wasn't a Patriot, man, just hurts.
God damn it, Jax.
Wow. Why is he going to suck so bad on the Patriots?
We are such homies. I swear to God. But Javon Baker.
Here's the Javon Baker case. Javon Baker is very simple in that he thinks unironically that he is the best wide receiver in the draft easily.
Yep.
And so now he's at New England. He does not have any doubt in his mind that he's the best wide receiver on that team. It's not even occurred to him that it's possible that he might not be. It hasn't even crossed his mind. This is who he is. Now, this is either Antonio Brown, where he's just a lunatic and he's actually good, or he's a lunatic. Either way, I don't really care. It's a third-round pick. If you get the lunatic and he's actually good, it's amazing. So you have a lot of asymmetrical upside with Javon Baker, and you'll probably know pretty quick because he's probably going to play. So if he flames out, it'll be you can get off quick. And it's only a third-round pick. Kamani Vidal, obviously, is someone that I unearthed early, just with film work, by the way. Which
I think you single-handedly steamed him up.
I'm not a film guy,
but I single-handedly did it.
Oh, I loved it. I was like, dude, you watch his film, you're like, wait, this guy's good. Why is this guy good? This guy's really good. And then all of a sudden you hear Matt Waldman and all these other film guys are like, yeah, he's really, really good. And I'm like, yeah, he is. Oh, good. And then he goes in the 6th round. I didn't love that. So I don't like taking him in the 2nd round because I don't really like taking 6th round running back.
Yeah, that's tough.
2nd round of a rookie draft. That does not sound fun. But I've hit him, right there, 3, 4, 5, 6. You're right in that mid 3. It's I love it when he falls to me. So I'll ask you, Brandon. I was on the clock last night. I had 2 players left in my queue. Is that the 305 or some 304? Javon Baker and Kamani Vidal. Who should I have taken? Just in a vacuum.
In a vacuum, I'm taking Baker because I just think he has crazy upside.
I probably should have. I took Vidal last night.
But I know where you're going with it. I know where you're going with it with Vidal, and I get it. I've been having real tough time at the 301 through 304. The grouping of Roman Wilson, Vidal, Burton. Yes. Those are the ones that really it's tough to distinguish, man. And
it is.
I'm all there with you on that. But Javon Baker. So the funny thing is, I don't know if you don't know anything about my history, but I'm a wounded vet. I was wounded in Baghdad, Iraq, and I lost my legs overseas. So I'm in a wheelchair. And when he said, I'm going to make people in wheelchairs stand up, brother, you are correct. When I was watching his freaking tape and watching games of his, man, I was hooting and hollering more than anybody, doing little donuts in my man cave where I watch everything. And my wife is like, what are you doing in there? I'm like, I'm watching this kid, Javon Baker, just is a dog, man. I love this kid. And I totally understand the kid's the mentality he has, and that's exactly what he has, that Kobe kind of guy where I'm the best. I don't give a shit what anybody thinks. And I love that stuff. I'm always going to bet on people like that because if you aren't going to believe in yourself, no one else will. So that is the biggest thing I love about Javon Baker.
Well, 2 things just happened. Number 1, you made me regret my pick, and you're right. I should have taken Javon Baker. Number 2, bro, we have become fast friends, and my respect level for you could never be higher, brother. I've fallen in love with you as a bro. We've got a little bromance going. I really didn't even know how much I respected you till I just found that out. So
no worries, man. And that's why I love. So I'm lucky enough to be kind of retired, so I get to do this fantasy stuff for fun.
Right.
So So this just brings me so much joy to be able to talk fantasy and go into depth with the guy like at the where you're taking dynasty theory is where it needs to go, and just keep pushing it, and that's what it's all about.
You know, you say it because it's like, this is passion. You know, the whole reason I even started a podcast was not for money, notoriety, none of it. I was like, I think I could be pretty good at that, and that sounds fun as hell. And that's it. It was passion. It was all about, because I love football. Like I love playing football. I love watching football. I love thinking about football. I love playing, you know, Madden. I mean, and the last thing I'll leave you with is Dynasty is like when you played Madden and you'd play arcade mode and you just play a game. And then when you found franchise mode is Dynasty.
Yes, I agree.
Well, it's so funny. Like, we've met so many amazing people, and we're all over the world. I live in Canada, Jax. Like, you're down in California. Cez is down in Florida. Our guy Mike is in Delaware. Brandon's in Colorado. Like, we're all over North America.
Yes.
And how do we meet these people? Like, I've met Brandon. I've stayed with his family, like at his home. Like, that would have never happened if we didn't have this silly game called fantasy football. So this community is unbelievable, and that's what I love so much about it. It's the people, really, right?
Yes.
Keep this going.
Yes. Absolutely. You meet more and more great people, and you're like, this is getting so much more and more fun. And meeting you guys and getting to know you better today was a lot of fun. And hopefully the people love the show. I mean,
I think
who knows? I hope so.
I think they will, brother. I think they will. Hey, Jax, before we get out of here, I want you to have an opportunity to plug what you're doing. Again, I'm just gonna say, like, I genuinely, you're probably my favorite new voice. I say new. I know you've been doing it for a while, but new to my airspace.
New to you, right?
And I listen to your show every single week. I love what you have. I love the guests you have. I love the fact that everybody has player takes, but you really like to peel back the onion, and just like how you approach the game of fantasy football is, I learn a lot. So I really appreciate it. So keep doing what you're doing, but tell the people a little bit about where they can find all your content.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. Yeah. The key is, just not being so certain. And I think the one thing I did want to mention was, like, I think about JJ Zacharias, and he always says, think in terms of range of outcomes. Don't ever be so sure. I mean, we're pretty sure, like, Marvin Harrison is going to be great. Well, how sure? Still only 95% or whatever, there's a possibility. So always think in range of outcomes. And that's the best thing about this game is, and then if you want to have a player take, or, you're playing for small money and you want to make a big bet, a big statement, go for it. But if you're putting leverage and money on the line, you definitely want to not necessarily step in it all the time. So, playing with that range of outcomes is huge. You can find all my work at theundroppables.com. At the Undroppables on Twitter. My Twitter is at Dino Game Theory. Mostly nonsense and fun and sarcasm there, but sometimes I'll tag the real work. The Undrafted is our show. We do have the Undroppables network feed as well. My show is featured on Player Profiler, but the rest of the Undroppables, by the way, guys, you guys may want to get involved. We have every single team. We have a team podcast. So, like, there's a Kansas City podcast. There's a, Pittsburgh Steeler podcast. There's a show on every Jets, the whole thing. Right. And so I don't know that we've filled every single team. So hit us up if you know someone or want someone, or you guys want to do a show on the Undroppables for your favorite team. Hit it up.
I got Seattle taken. I'm good.
Let's go. Let's go. Yeah. Awesome. Hit me up. We'll do it. If you want to do it, it's fun as hell, because there's no rules. It's like, it's your show. It's just, we thought it'd be fun to have, because who doesn't want to listen to their own team? Like, I always joke, Honest Abe does the Jets show, and every time the Jets come out, I go, hate the Jets, but damn, I love podcasts. Don't know what to do here, So I always joke around, but it's like, it's a fun as hell show, and you get to just trip out. Dan Wisner and Dan Bradley do the Patriots. Every now and again, I might make a cameo on that, but yeah, we've got the Patriots, the whole thing. It's a lot of fun. So go to the Undroppables, podcast feed, and you'll find them all there.
I love it. I love it. And listen, for our big part of our audience is, as the name would suggest, are DFS players. And I'm just going to tell you, so I'm looking at you all now, our DFS players. The reason you want to go to the undroppables.com and get the UN scores, because week 16 or week 15, right? And like, there's injuries galore, and you're trying to figure out what type of players you want to go deep and save a little money in your salary for your slates. By having the UN score and being able to identify, okay, which guys are just good at football, These are the types of players that could help win you and save you a bunch of cash in your DFS slate. So that's just a huge takeaway as well. So Jax, we really appreciate your time.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Go follow Jax on Twitter. Go subscribe to the Undroppables YouTube page. Make sure that you're obviously subscribed to their podcast feed and also the Player Profiler podcast feed. All the content will be found there. Of course, where do we hail? We hail from dfsarmy.com, dfsarmy.com. And what's kind of cool, Jax, is that we've got a bit of a community, and we have multiple Millie winners in our community. So it's pretty cool, right? So we joke about it all the time, but literally our members are winning money, real money, every single day. So go dfsarmy.com.
Yes.
All right. So for Jax, for Brandon, I am Flex Shane, and we are the DFS Army Fantasy Football Show.
Big time, no man, diamonds in my